How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the Job of the World Options Trading Academy. And what we want to do is kind of also mix in the markets with a lot of things that are going to be health based because we understand that if you're out here making a lot of money, what you don't want to do is disregard your health because as a result, you can make the money and then you're going to have to spend all that money to try to put that back in regaining your health. So we wanted to bring this particular topic to you over and over again to get you to understand the importance of staying healthy. We have Ross Hassan of Heal Thy Hustle to come in through and to kind of talk about how to make millions of business while staying healthy. If you listen to it, let me know what part of the country that you're coming out of, and we're going to go ahead and get into the conversation. So Ross, man, how you doing? What's going on with you?
Man, I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Beautiful and just wonderful to be here, man. I love your platform. And so I'm excited to speak to your audience because I know that the people that listen to you are serious about changing their lives, man. So I'm ready to get into it.
I feel you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. I know you're busy with what you're doing. We're getting ready to go into the fourth quarter, but we really wanted to take the time off to kind of get entrepreneurs to kind of understand the importance of their health. Because years ago, I was with a guy, and he had made a lot of money in engineering, but he told me, he said, don't disregard your health to make the money. He said that was a mistake that he made, and that he had to try to figure out how to get his health back. And like we talked about before, you can spend a lot of your capital and a lot of the money that you gain trying to reclaim your health. It can be very difficult once it starts to go in the wrong direction. So really quickly for the audience to kind of get a better understanding of you, how did you kind of get involved in the health space?
Man, so I talk about this in Heal Thy Hustle a little bit. My mother and her complications with health. I'm the youngest of really 4 children. So when I was coming up, it was, everybody else was gone and it was just me and my mother in high school. And so she started experiencing certain complications and the food in our house changed dramatically and drastically. And that's the type of person that my mother is, right? She's not just going to, take medication. She's going to see what she can do naturally. And I picked that up from her definitely early on. But it was also around that time that I had made a decision. The very first decision about my diet was to not eat pork around age 17, and I think that was also pivotal for me to begin thinking about what it is that I'm consuming, because a lot of people sleepwalk through life, especially with the food that they consume. So that's kind of how I got into it. But really later on, specifically, I had like a quarter life crisis at 25, and I was really just unfulfilled in life, and had experienced a certain level of success by then. And I was working. I had a job that was supposed to be perfect, but I had to really think about what makes me happy. And I had to think about what my inner child really loved. And it really went back to me loving plants and loving martial arts. So I decided to dive into those things. And it really was just, an interest, a passion around just really enjoying plants. But in my own healing journey, of course, it, kind of took over, and I've been able to really focus on that and find my niche with helping entrepreneurs and really just high performing individuals specifically how to still maintain their health and get to the bag.
Okay. And so, from your experience working with entrepreneurs, high performing individuals, why do you think so many of them feel like they have to disregard their health to get the financial or the monetary success that they desire?
I really think, just people in general are ignorant of how their bodies work. If you think about the average adult, if you were to ask them where their pancreas is and what it does, or if you were to ask them where's their liver and what does it do, what is your lymphatic system about, right? We really don't know. And so that's really the first thing, that a lot of people just don't know how the situation works. And then to, compound that, I think a lot of people don't pay enough attention to the food that they're eating. Just people in general, right? Where a lot of people will eat food, have never looked at the nutrition facts, never looked at the ingredients, but, they'll eat it. And so they don't necessarily know what's in it. And then I think that kind of goes into the third point of that a lot of people have a cognitive dissonance when it comes to cause and effect, especially when it comes to food. And so it's not that people don't understand that, inputs equals outputs, but I think that when it comes to food, there's kind of this disconnect around cause and effect and how it works. So, but for entrepreneurs in particular, man, I think the main thing is that the lifestyle, not only of the grind, but again, I talk about this in Heal Thy Hustle, is the fact that, you're having these happy hour dinners, right? So you may be drinking a lot of alcohol at these networking events. You're having late nights, early mornings. You're probably eating fast food because you're on the go. You're probably stressed out. You have, you might be in school, you have children, family life, some other things going on, job, while you're building a business potentially. And so you think you don't have time to go to the gym. So all of these things begin to compound. And then, of course, that's when you hit that wall of your body's, the alarms begin to go off and something's got to give, something's got to change.
Okay. And so let me ask you a question, because one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs deal with is, what I call time compression, where you sometimes don't feel like you got enough time, but you feel like, you got to work 12, 13-hour days. And as a result, when it comes to your food choices, you can start making concessions to that just to make sure you got something to eat. Now, what a lot of people that are quote unquote gurus in the space, they sometimes recommend is people getting like the packaged food. So you don't have to make food choices. Well, you can order the food online and it's just brought to you and it's pretty much already prepackaged. You just got to cook it. But in looking at those, what I realized with a lot of those companies is that the food has a really, really high sodium content. So then the question is, can you suggest something to those entrepreneurs? Because these prepackaged foods are supposed to be a solution to that problem. But then when I started looking at the profile of the actual food, we know with any type of processed food, there's going to be a large degree of sodium, because sodium is an old school preservative. So then the issue is that I don't want to eat the food with the high sodium, but then at the same time, as an entrepreneur, I may feel like I don't have time to sit back and cook fresh meals. Or even if I'm a vegan, make sure I put together something that's going to be healthy. So then I feel like, well, then I just got to make a bad food choice just to make sure I get some calories in for the day, just to feed my body something to get some type of energy. So as a person that's an expert in this particular space, how can an entrepreneur approach this particular situation?
My suggestion is, and I think you kind of hinted on it a second ago, is limiting, or I guess our ability to make choices within a day, right? And the energy that we have to make choices within a day. So always tell people to prioritize your health first thing in the morning. So whatever you can do, whether that be work out first thing in the morning, eat the salad first thing in the morning, meditate, whatever those things are, while you still have the mental capacity, you still have the willpower, right, to do those things. So specifically, my thing is focus on breakfast. And as I've learned more about nutrition in the time that Heal Thy Hustle was released and where I'm at now in terms of the knowledge that I have around nutrition, I'm recommending eating your salad. And when I say salad, you can think of the rainbow, right? Where, of course, green is the main color. So you can start off with a bit of spinach, couple handfuls, maybe chop up 5 or so strawberries, toss some blueberries on top, throw some hemp seed on there. Then we'll maybe have some lemon juice. And you might be able to just, cut up some garlic on top, right, to mix it all up. And then I generally cut it all up together to mix the flavor in. And then I maybe have 2 eggs, or let's say some dried nuts or something like that for the fat content and the protein, to make sure that I'm fueling my brain to be able to make decisions today, while also prioritizing that chlorophyll, that leafy green, that fiber, just in case if I'm out for the day and I've got to eat, a hamburger for lunch, or I've got a dinner this night where I know I've got to eat something at a restaurant that's generally outside of what I would cook for myself, right? So breakfast is the main thing that you want to really focus on. And then even beyond that, as you're grocery shopping and thinking about your snacks throughout the day, I talk about the importance of stone fruit, right? And your oranges and your apples and things that you can carry around, right? Unlike, let's say, a strawberry or a blueberry, where you can't necessarily put that in your pocket or bag and go. So these are different things that you can do throughout the day. Also, staying hydrated, the importance of water consumption throughout the day, because a lot of people think that they're hungry, but in reality, they're really just thirsty. So making sure that, you got your water on you. And again, I'm really thinking of we're playing the better than game in a lot of ways, to where very similar to investing, right? Some people are investing at a $200 a week level, $500 a week level, where other people are investing at a $50 a week level, right? In 20 years, the goal, however, is the same, is that everything that I'm putting in right now will add up on the back end. So as you're putting in your $5 with pride, right? Or put it in your 5 minutes as we think about the gym, or even thinking about just eating the salad throughout the day, right? Put it in that time, feel good about that. But the goal is, of course, over time, to increase the input, so that when get bigger returns on the back end.
Okay, okay. And let me ask you if you could get in a little bit of audio issues. Is it coming in on your end?
Yeah, I guess it is. How you say something?
One check, mic check, 1, 2.
Yep, it's coming in on my end. Want me to leave and come back?
Yeah, try that if you could, please.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and let them come back in. We're getting a little bit of audio clipping. And it's not coming in when I'm talking. So I think it might be something on his end. You know how it is with these internet services. They're not always as robust as we would like them to be. So we're gonna get back to the conversation, because what I want to talk about is some of the downsides of people ignoring their health, just with the particular goal of trying to figure out how to make money, things of that nature, because I think this is going to be really, really important as we get ready to go into this fourth quarter and then go into 2023. Because we've gotten a lot of conversation and narratives online, and we're going to kind of talk about that, is that you should be willing to sacrifice your health to be financially successful. And I think that's going to be detrimental to a lot of people as time goes on, because one of the biggest challenges is that, and I noticed because I used to work in healthcare, when you start having health issues, not only does it take money away from you, it takes a lot of time out of your life. And that's time that you can't get back. So you want to make sure you don't put yourself in that position. Roz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep, we back in the game.
Okay, we're doing a little bit better. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to this next point. Let me go ahead and bring you in. Sorry about that. Okay, so what are some of the downsides of these entrepreneurs ignoring their health?
Man, death. Let's just be, straightforward about it, right? We think about Steve Jobs, who had his bout with pancreatic cancer. We think about, Andre Harrell, Chucky Thompson, MF Doom, right? Sean Price, a lot of these people who are in the entertainment space, entrepreneurial space, right? Again, living that life of late nights, early mornings. It's always time for a happy hour drink, right? You might be consuming some other type of substance or whatever the case, just in that lifestyle. So that's really the first thing that, I caution people about. And then the second thing is going back to making decisions and how your edge is ultimately your brain power. You know what I mean? And how you can strategize and think. And if you're not feeding your body the necessary things that, are required to develop that dopamine and that serotonin, or, those other neurotransmitters that are going to help you throughout the day and just throughout life, that's where the depression comes in, and the anxiety and all those different things, where you're trying to figure out what's going on. And it really all starts with what you're eating and the exercise, because I know people say that, try to treat mental health differently from physical health, but I'm a big proponent that your brain is a part of your body. And so physical health is mental health. And so it's important for you to really be in tune with staying on top of your workout, eating those foods, because on the back end, it's going to put you in better position. But also beyond that, when you aren't eating those foods, like to your question of what happens when you don't, in our world right now, to where your immune system is lowered because of, infectious disease or whatever the case may be, that folks are experiencing right now, and long COVID symptoms and all of these things that people are experiencing and not necessarily able to easily bounce back from. So when you're not taking care of yourself, and as we both know, as even if you are an entrepreneur and you've got people working for you, if you're a key part of that business in terms of getting sales in and organizing and operating that organization, it's important for you to be in tip-top shape, right? So even as a trader, even as an investor, it's important for you to be in shape. And also looking at a guy like Warren Buffett, to where he was able to make most of his money after 50 years old. And so for many entrepreneurs, or some of the names that I just mentioned, like the Andre Harrells or the Chucky Thompsons or whoever, the MF Dooms, they didn't get to experience the fruit of their labor, over the course of that 30 plus extra years, and take advantage of compound interest over that period of time. So yeah, man, it's you really cut yourself short, sell yourself short in the interim, but also in the long term.
Definitely. So let's talk about this hustle culture, right? And so this is a big thing, and we were talking about this earlier. So how do you think hustle culture, which is just work? I'm gonna talk about a little bit about people that say sleep is for suckers and you should sleep when you're dead. How do you think that's changed the perception of how entrepreneurs should take care of their health?
Man, I think it's done a number on how entrepreneurs think they should take care of their health, because a lot of people are watching that highlight reel and you're getting this constant feed. Shout out to LLC Twitter of people just saying, hey, I made this progress, I've done this, I've reached this milestone, I've achieved this. And so now you feel that you got to keep up with them. And then it's like, oh man, I gotta work. Also, people come into entrepreneurship. This is something totally outside of health, but similar. People come into entrepreneurship still with the job mindset of I have to do everything. And so for a lot of entrepreneurs, as I'm working with them and coaching them, a lot of the solutions come down to automation and delegation. If you're and really working smarter, to where if you feel that you can't get rest because you have all this work to do, how can you delegate this to somebody else on your team? How can you automate this so you don't have to think about it? Or is it really important for you to really do it to begin with, right? What's a smarter way to go about it? So that's really the first line of defense around, as an entrepreneur, feeling like you've got to do everything. The second thing is going back to the edge and having your brain power and your brain being the edge. Rest is so important for that. Also, they're finding recently that specifically diabetes is tied to how much rest you're getting, even more so than how much food or the type of food that you're eating. So when it comes to other health complications, and shout out to Rose and Wheezy and all of these other, even Diddy and his chronic insomnia issues of you shouldn't rest. We've seen how that plays out in real time and what that looks like, to where, yeah, you have to rest. Your body's going to make you rest sooner or later.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's, we create this narrative, and this is, I think it impacts a lot of people where they go into business and they're not really fully capitalized. So then they don't feel like I can hire the people around me to build a team to do some of the things that I don't have the ability to do. So they think, well, I just got to try to do it. And then you buy into this narrative that people are successful because they don't sleep. And one of the things from a performance standpoint is something I've really had to work on, is that there's been a lot of studies that say that if you don't get at least 6 hours, 6.5, maybe 7 hours of sleep a night, you're essentially operating as somebody that's like intoxicated. And then once you get into a habit of doing that, you don't really realize how you're robbing yourself of performance because you're not sleeping. So I just tell anybody that believes in this narrative that, we're not trying to talk about anybody personally, but they believe in a narrative that sleep is for suckers and you shouldn't go to sleep unless you're rich. You can neglect your sleep, but just make sure that you have enough money on the back end to deal with the doctors and to deal with the support staff that you're going to need as a result of not getting sleep. Because the human body only has so many productive hours per day. And once that's over, you could still be running, but you're really not that productive. And so one of the ways to optimize your productivity is to make sure you're really well rested, so then you can maximize the few hours of productivity that you have. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss out on. And you're right, it's because of the job. The job tells you got to work 8.5+ hours to be acceptable in that environment. And so many people just think that's how they have to work. But we've done a lot of studies to show that most people are not productive for 8 hours. They might only be productive for 5 hours, but they got to work an extra 3 hours because that's the terms of the conditions of their employment, or maybe even longer. So I really want to tell people is that really make sure, especially from sleep, because you talked about before, sleep starts to disrupt your endocrine system. If you're a man, it starts to raise your cortisol level, which starts to compete for your testosterone level. The cortisol is going to always wind out, which means it starts dropping your testosterone level, which means now the estrogen starts winning out, which is where you start getting a lot of the weight gain from. With women, the same thing. It starts to lower your estrogen level, starts to raise your progesterone level. So it really can throw your whole endocrine system off because of the lack of sleep. Then all the other stresses that you have as an entrepreneur, you're trying to make sure you make enough money. You're trying to make sure you close deals. You got issues with customers, yada, yada, yada. So all that starts to come down on you, and you never figure out how to solve that problem. You're just going to end up real sick. So I just tell everybody is that don't buy into this idea that the only way to be successful is to lose sleep at night. If you can figure out how to maximize your productivity over the few hours that you're working, it's better than working twice as long, but still not being productive. You're only going to be productive for 4 hours and just do 4 hours. But thinking that I got to work 10 hours, but I'm only productive for 4, but I'm just making myself stay up, you're really not helping yourself. In fact, you're hurting yourself long term. And that's something I want to really get people to guard against. This lie that we bought into is that you got to just do things so long. It's really not healthy. but it's a part of getting people to believe that they have to do this kind of over the top effort to be successful. So then when they can't maintain it, they blame themselves. But in reality, like you talked about, really successful people have other people around them to do things that they can't do. So they don't have to sit up and try to work 12 hours a night, 6 days a week. Are there some people that work like that? Definitely. But that's not the optimal situation.
Indeed. Indeed. Especially if you're ordering pizza and, you know, drinking alcohol while you're staying up. Right. So, nah, that's really the killer right there.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about before, if you have to ingest a lot of caffeine to stay up at night, you know, that means you're tired. And so you're going to try to manipulate your body's biochemistry to stay up. It's really not healthy long-term. It's something you may have to do short-term, but it's really not healthy long-term. A lot of people get into those long-term habits of doing that type of stuff. And like I said, they crash. So let's talk about.
We say lack of sleep is the cousin of death. Not sleep, but lack of sleep is the cousin of death.
Yeah, definitely. It really is. And there's a lot of studies around that. But like I said before, is I think people don't really understand their productivity. I think if people track their productivity, they will find that they have a really short productivity window. So anything past that, they're not really productive. So now what they can work to do is make that window expand. But the average person has never really tracked their productive hours. And so if they really track their productive hours, they will find that they might only be productive 3 hours a day. So then why are you spending 12 hours a day working if you're only really productive 3 hours a day? The other 9 hours, you're just bullshitting.
Right.
So you're just making yourself tired for no reason, as opposed to trying to figure out how can I make those 3 hours a day turn into 4 hours a day, but still make sure I get my sleep so I can be productive next day. Because if we talk about like high performance athletes, one thing they really do is make sure they get their sleep.
Yep.
So that's something I think a lot of people don't realize, especially as they get older. And I mean, like over 25 years old, is they really start to realize I got to maximize their sleep. So they may be getting 9 hours of sleep a day. Average person's running around here maybe on 6.5 hours of sleep if they're lucky. And they don't realize is that they're being asked to stay up 12, 13 hours a day working, and it really doesn't work. And then, like you said, you add in the alcohol, you add in the drugs, you add in the other stressors, and then that just compounds on a body that is already fatigued, that's now being forced to perform, and you're just going to make mistakes. So let's talk about what are some of the 4 things that entrepreneurs can do to stay healthy while building their business?
Okay, so off top, I mentioned earlier of eating. Well, really, first things first, stop eating dessert for breakfast, right? Let's just go there, right? You shouldn't be eating pancakes with syrup, plus the jelly on the biscuit, plus the sugar in the coffee and the frappuccino and all of that on top. Like, no, let's cut that out for breakfast first and foremost, and let's eat our leafy greens for breakfast. Whether you like spinach, you like kale, you like arugula, whatever you like, whatever your thing is, and mix that with, you know, if it's chicken that you like, or if it's the fruits and veggies that you like, whatever the case is. First things first, stop eating dessert for breakfast. Eat your leafy greens for breakfast. The second thing is lift weights. It is important. I know the walking is cool. And again, it's the better than game, right? So walking is better than nothing. Skating is better than walking. If you're running high performance, that's better than the skating, right? If you're, but I'm a major proponent of lifting weights. That is, as we get older, we lose our muscle mass. How do we combat that? By lifting weights. My aunt, she's 80 something years old, and she hit the gym 5 days a week. Even though she was having some health complications based upon her diet, her body was able to withstand those surgeries because she was going to the gym regularly. So hit the weights. And my thing is consistency over duration. Some days as an entrepreneur, my calendar is much more filled than other days. So I'm only able to do a solid 10 to 15 minutes. I got to hit it, whatever muscle groups I'm going to do. I generally do full body because, right, my time is sporadic. But if I'm going to do 10 minutes, I'm going to do a good 10 minutes, and then I'm out of there. If I'm doing 45 minutes, if I got time, let's hit it. But consistency and just maintaining that in my routine and, the behavior of my brain, like, okay, I've got to make sure that I get to the gym. That's important.
Okay.
Drinking your water, that is extremely important. As electric beings and us sending neurotransmission all through our bodies all day long, to make sure that we can get those signals there, we want to make sure that we are drinking water so that we can make the best decisions possible. And then, of course, right, we already hit on it, man. You got to rest. And so whether that be, again, delegate or automate, and make sure that you get your time in to rest, so that way you can come back and be sharp and get the work done. So very practically, and I guess I'll toss in a fifth one, if and maybe six, if you're able to take a bath, take baths. If you have access to a bathtub, take baths, submerge yourself in water. If you got to do, shout out to being, some people are taller than others. If you got to put half of your body in at a time, right? Make sure that you're taking baths with some Epsom salt or whatever you have to submerge yourself and your organs in that warm water. And also it's good for your mental health to just take some time out and to, sit still for 15 to 20 minutes inside of the water. And then, of course, if you can, I would recommend intermittent fasting. I know that that's gotten really popular lately, but making sure that, again, that you're just not consuming all the time, but really giving your stomach and your immune system time to rest, so that way you can stay in tip-top shape, and also to give you that energy boost, so you're not always digesting food, that you have time to, just be and drink your water as you're fasting. So those would be the 5-6 things I say for any entrepreneur or anybody to, include into their daily routine that's going to show major results.
Okay, and I like that information. And one thing about me is I started maybe almost a decade ago. So I used to not eat until like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yep.
I stopped doing that. What I don't do now is I don't eat anything after maybe 9 o'clock, 9:30, except maybe like a fourth of a cup of peanuts. Okay. So like I usually try to make sure I have my dinner before 9:30, because I normally wake up around 8, 7:30, 8 o'clock. So then I try to get almost 12 hours of not having food in my body. Every once in a while, if I'm up later, I may eat like a fourth of a cup of peanuts. But one thing I don't do is try to eat real late and then go to sleep, and then make sure there's at least 10 hours potentially between when I last ate. Okay. But what I want to ask you is that with the 4 particular things that you offer. So the first one was stop eating dessert for breakfast. So when you tell somebody that, what are their normal objections, and then how do you kind of deal with that?
Man, so I think the main thing is getting people to understand how simple it is, and that there are other alternatives. And what I realize as I'm working with my clients, it's not that I'm trying to get you to stop eating your favorite foods. The goal is to get you to change what your favorite foods are. So, in the sense of, as we move away from sugar, right? I get my clients, first and foremost, is to start to pay attention to how many grams of sugar is in everything that they consume. Because again, going back to sodium, that sugar and that salt side by side, and we could get into oils, the different seed oils later, but that sugar and that salt side by side is doing a number on folks. So I get them to count the sugar first. And really, that's the main thing that's throwing our taste buds off as well, is how much salt and sugar we consume on a daily basis. So when we eat an apple that has its natural sugar in it, it's not doing the same thing to our brain, because we're used to this, heavy, dense processed sugar and this, crazy salt. So first and foremost, getting folks to move away from all of that, and really just showing them the alternatives and really getting them to move towards their goals. Because that's really the main thing, is, do you want it or not? And thinking about, are you moving away from your favorite food, or are you moving towards being here around for your grandchildren, right? And being able to see your children grow up. So really getting them put in perspective, man, that, you got to change your thinking around these whole things first and foremost.
Okay. And then, so the second one we talked about was going to be drinking water. So when you tell people, to put down some of the carbonated drinks, things of that nature, and to drink more water, what are some of their objections, and how do you kind of overcome those?
I think really the objection with water is running to the bathroom. That's what a lot of people like. I don't want to go, it's going to throw me off. I have to go to the bathroom. But I've learned that adding the higher quality water that you drink, actually the less, you have to run to the bathroom, because your body's able to absorb that water just a little bit better. Also, as we talk about eating foods with water naturally inside them, so that you're able to still give your body the water, without just straight up drinking spring water or distilled water that's probably going to run through your system, right? Where that alkaline water is going to stay in you a little bit longer. It's going to be able to absorb a little bit better. But if you're eating oranges, apples, strawberries, right, celery, cucumber, even your spinach, that high water content, that's also going to be beneficial for you.
Okay. And so then when you talk to people about making sure they get enough rest, and they're used to staying up at night, they're used to staying up all weekend. They used to going out after work and drinking and smoking and then coming back and then, getting 3 hours of sleep and going back to work. What are some of the objections to that? And how do you kind of overcome those objections, to try to modify their behavior?
I think with the rest, going back to the mindset where a lot of people as children, right? It was a whole thing when you were a child, you wanted to stay up late because you wanted to see what was going to happen. And so a lot of people still subconsciously have this thing in their mind, I'm going to miss something if I don't stay up late. And so getting them to really, again, reprogram themselves and how they're thinking about it, the importance of it. And also, if you're going to, as anybody who realizes, if I'm going to make an impact the next day, I've got to prepare the night before. And so as you get into a continuity of, success, you understand that, like, okay, I've got to really start to prep the night before, so that way I can get up. I'll have that time to be able to make a salad, to go to the gym, to potentially take a bath before, I can get my day started. So that's a whole nother situation of like, okay, you've got to get to bed, and really the importance, but also the quality of the rest that we're getting, turning the TV off, right? Making sure you sleeping completely in the dark, or from an Ayurvedic standpoint, if you're sleeping on your left side, so you'll be able to wake up and your digestive system can, move everything out, right, the next morning. So the quality of the rest is also important as well. And also, I'm a proponent of naps too. If if you're through the day, gotta take a nap, go ahead and do that, right? How many car accidents do we have every year because somebody decided not to take a nap, right? And just because they weren't in a car making a bad decision, as you mentioned earlier, if you're intoxicated all the time, but potentially making bad decisions as well, right? Because you don't have enough rest. So it's important to, to just go ahead and get that.
Okay. And then talking about the baths, I know a lot of people's objection may be, the time, or, some people may feel like they can't fit inside the tub for whatever reason. Yeah. So what are some of the objections that people give you about taking baths, and how do you kind of overcome those objections to get them to understand that could be good for them health wise?
Yep. Shout out to Social Proof, man. I've a lot of men. I was at a comedy show a couple of weeks back, and the comedian on stage, of course, he was going in about how it's essentially soft for a man to take a bath, and that you, as a man, you shouldn't be taking baths. And I was thinking about how, that's one of the reasons why women potentially live longer, is because they're taking baths and giving more thought about how to care for their physical bodies than men are. So that's really the first thing, is right, that objection. But one of my bros, he actually began to incorporate baths into his routine, and he's seen a major boost in his overall health. And so that's kind of one of the things that I can lean on, is really just other people talking about the importance and the benefits of the bath, but also the logic of it, right? Of how, thinking about in Heal Thy Hustle, I kind of go into from the perspective of the original man, the original people, what were they doing to care for their bodies, right? And so it's kind of relatively new that everybody is trying to cleanse themselves with water coming down on them. For a long time, humans were cleansing themselves and submerging themselves into bodies of water to bathe. And so just thinking about that, the bath is extremely important for us, whether you're looking at the aquatic ape theory or any of that, right? It's important for us to submerge ourselves in water to cleanse. Also, a lot of people, even when it comes to like with the gym, it's necessary for the gym, but also a lot of people, man, aren't necessarily, again, they don't know their bodies and they're not cleansing themselves properly. And so that bath is going to get underneath that other layer of skin to get that funk out. Because a lot of people, based upon what they're eating, you can smell it coming out of their pores. And so that bath is also going to help you, stay fresher longer.
Okay. So do people need to learn how to take baths? Because my objection to always taking a bath was that I don't want to sit if I'm in a river or a lake, that's different because it's such a large body of water.
Right.
So my biggest objection to a bath outside of one, most bathtubs aren't big enough for me to sit down in, unless I get one custom made, like for a house or something. But the second one is that I always felt that if you're bathing and the dirt's coming off of you, then you sitting in dirty water. So that was always my objection to a
right.
bath. So how do you deal with somebody that might have that mentality?
Yeah, no, you definitely want to shower first. Definitely want to, rinse that dirt off first, right? Scrub it off first, clean the tub out, and then you're going to run your bath water, right? So you do want to take that bath clean already, because the bath is for soaking, and after you've already gave it the cleanse, right? So you give it the cleanse and then you give it the soak to get everything else out, right, to give you a fresh start. And specifically for the muscles as we go into the gym, or for the unsexy side of health and wellness, is removing all of the stuff that's coming out. So that Epsom salt gonna help move your bowels and keep everything flowing, and also that bath in general is gonna help you out. So like you say, to the objection is you don't want to be dirty. No, take that shower first, and then of course as you soak in the water, you won't get that ring that you would if you just hopped in the tub after a long day.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, when you're reaching out to people, right, and you're talking to them about staying healthy, so just the general person that may not know you, they may not know what particular initiative that you're pushing. What are some of their two objections just right off the top about staying healthy?
Really is that they think they don't have the time.
Okay.
And then it's also the fact that they love certain foods and they think that they've got to give up everything and they've got to make this drastic lifestyle change, right?
Okay.
And so with that, again, we hit our hustle, we playing the better than game, because tap water is better than popping juice, right? Spring water is better than that. Distilled water is better than that, right? Alkaline water is better than that, so on and so forth, right? If you mix the chlorophyll in, it's even better than that. So it can always be better. But the thing is, if you incorporate some of these practices into your lifestyle, so it's like if you are able to just take a bath, you eating whatever you want to, but now you start taking baths, right? Or you don't take the baths, but you done switched up your breakfast a little bit, or you're doing everything else the same, but now you've been going to the gym 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes a day, right? Keeping up the consistency. And it's because it's kind of really like, if you could just do one of these things, you don't have to try to be perfect, because again, it's about, similar to investing, everything counts, right? If it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. So don't neglect yourself and say that, oh, I can't do it at all. It's like, do a little bit, and that's better than what you were doing previously, right? And so we essentially playing the better than game until the best choice becomes our norm.
Okay, that makes sense. So now let me ask you, because this is something that I see a lot in the health space, is that we know the bottom of the funnel is couch potatoes. So that's really where the biggest amount of scale is at. And one thing I noticed with a lot of health practitioners is that a lot of the information they have is for people that are grossly overweight, have terrible food choices, don't work out at all, because that's really where the bottom of the funnel at. That's where the scale is at. That's how you build the next insanity. That's how you build the next P90X. However, what information is going to be available for the people that are already in shape? They already watch what they eat, and they're looking to optimize their performance. So let me give you an example. It's easy to take somebody from a 15-inch vertical to a 25-inch vertical. It's much harder to take somebody from a 44-inch vertical to a 46, because they're already at peak level. So to add those next 2 inches in can take another 2 years. And so one of the biggest challenges I see with a lot of people that are already health conscious, they already work out, they already take care of themselves, they watch what they eat, they're trying to optimize, they're trying to work at a peak level, is that there's not a lot of information for them, because somebody just jumps on the internet and says, well, you need to cut all the sugar out of your diet. Well, I already don't eat sugar. The only sugars I get come from fruit. And I don't eat a lot of fruit. I eat fruit seasonally, because I know that millions of years ago, we didn't have access to fruit 365 days a year. That was impossible based on what part of the world we were in. So then when we get into that lane, we start running out of people that can help us optimize or operate at a peak level, because they're dealing with the bottom of the funnel, which is the couch potato. So what can you suggest to those people that are really operating at a high level? They stay in shape, they take care of themselves, they watch what they eat, they work out on a regular basis. How can you kind of give them some insight on what they can do to try to optimize what they're doing to go from that 44-inch vertical to that 46-inch vertical. And they do understand it's going to take a long time to get there.
Definitely. I think that's important to know. And I think that's kind of where the herbs come in. So thinking about where these are the practices that we mentioned earlier, right? To where, okay, are you at a basic level doing all of these things well? If you're doing all of these things well, then okay, now we can talk about, as you mentioned, right, the tweaks of adding maybe an herbal supplement here, or adding a tea here, or adding, you know, if there's a particular part of your body to where, right, particularly for myself, right, I'm, you know, increasing the flexibility of my hips and my thighs to be able to strengthen my lymphatic system, which is ultimately going to help my immune system, right? So like those little tweaks to help you out, versus, like you say, just the basic things already. And I find out like a lot of entrepreneurs specifically, which is who the book is for, is people who are already performing at a high level, but it's these little gaps that they have with taking care of their health. And so it's kind of like, you know, shout out to you for having, you know, health knowledge and being conscious of what your body's doing and how it's operating, where a lot of people are just coming in at, okay, I'm pretty much operating on autopilot in all of these other areas of my life, except for my business, except for my trading or whatever the case. So how do we bring that all back? So like you say, from that level, it would be about customizing it, with, I would say, definitely herbs, maybe switching up, talking about what your workout is doing. And this is also something that I will offer to anybody who purchases the book and shows me that they purchased the book. We can talk about health consultation for you specifically if there's not necessarily an issue that you're having, but if there's a goal that you want to achieve when it comes to your health, that, you know, I would definitely be willing to go into that, because everybody is different and everybody's body is different. That's something I do want to highlight for sure, that just because it works for me, as you said this on your channel plenty of times, just because it worked for me don't necessarily mean it's going to work for you, and vice versa. So we got to understand who you are, what you are, and going back to, right, your lineage, your family's lineage. That was also something else on my health journey that I realized. I was learning about why my grandmother ate certain foods and why I saw, you know, certain foods around the house based upon what our DNA is and how our bodies are built and what our body types were. So all of that plays into it, man. But yeah, again, I'm willing to speak with anybody about it, and would recommend that they speak to a health professional who they trust to give them advice on how to go to the next level in that area.
Okay, I appreciate that. And so let's talk about your book, Heal Thy Hustle. Can you give us some insight on your book, what your book was designed to accomplish, and, you know, how you're kind of promoting this particular book and the principles and the ideas behind the book?
Certainly. So it's drawn from, again, my own experience as an entrepreneur, who achieved some sizable success. However, I jumped into entrepreneurship directly out of college. And so we all know that college lifestyle generally comes with a lot of bad habits. And those bad habits carried right with me through into my entrepreneurship career. And then I realized that if I'm not operating at an optimal level, I can't be on the road pitching. I can't be, you know, making decks and doing all of these other things that are required of me. So what I did was, again, began to figure out how to heal myself. And then I dove into, kind of, as I mentioned earlier, right, plants, just off the fact that I really love plants, and realized that the things that I was learning, a lot of people just didn't know. That, you know, was fairly simple, right? Everything's obvious once you know the answer, but these were fairly simple things that I knew that I could give to people, and I could demystify herbalism essentially and make it something and get people to understand that you're already using the power of herbs when you put pepper on your potato. You're already using tinctures when you put hot sauce on your chicken, or whatever the case, right? So getting people to understand that you're already using the power of herbs and being more intentional about the herbs that you use. And also, is, you know, we just mentioned that it's not about being perfect, but it's about everything. Every little bit adds up at the end of your life. If you do everything correctly, right, you're gonna get to be old, and too many people aren't prepared for when they get up there. So very similar, again, back to investing. You want to do it today so that you get the payoff in the back end. I go into the process of change and the behaviors that come along with change, because it's not something that's just going to happen overnight, right? You are going to fall off. You are going to, want to get that craving and go get it. However, what are you going to do the next day? Are you just going to stay there and continue these bad habits, or are you going to move forward? So going into grocery shopping, talk about how you mentioned, right, buying your vegetables and your fruit seasonal, so that you understand, that you're and local if you can, so that way you're in tune with the environment. Is best for your system. I got some recipes in there for the people. I have my personal routine in there, and even go into some of the basic exercises that you can do at home, because all exercises essentially have, 5 moves, right? So if you are, you're at your desk or you're at the house, these are the different things that you can do at home if you just got a couple minutes. So I do my best as an entrepreneur to make it something to where it's short enough to where you could read it in a couple hours, but there's information and resources in here to where I can come back to it as a guide, also as, just a source of information.
Okay. So let me ask you a question that's more based around like health and fitness and how it kind of merges with society.
Yep.
So how would you, in your opinion, think that if we want to kind of get people to start looking at their health and fitness, that we create communication patterns that people don't feel like we're attacking them, but at the same time, we're promoting health and fitness? Because one of my biggest challenges to me personally, so let's take the entertainer Lizzo, for example. We're not trying to pick on her. We're just going to use her as an example.
Yep.
Many of the people that critique her, in my opinion, are not an example of what they're critiquing. So it comes across as being very negative and very hypocritical. So then how do we start trying to figure out how to create communication patterns? Because one, everybody's not going to have the same body shape, irregardless of what they do. Everybody's built differently. That's just a fact.
Yep.
I'm not one of these things. I believe that people are big bone. I just believe people are built differently. It's genetic. Some people are built very big. Some people are built small, yada, yada, yada. I come from tall people. Most people don't come from tall people. So it's not a coincidence that I came out tall, because most people, my mother's taller than most men, right? So it's not a coincidence. My father's taller than most men. So it was very obvious that I was going to come out tall. And I have a niece and nephew. They're barely in high school. They were already over 6 foot tall, because my brother-in-law is 6'2". My sister is taller than most men. So everybody's built different. So when we start talking about health and fitness, how can we create communication patterns that can get people to kind of understand how to take that as into account, but people don't feel like we're attacking them because of maybe something they may not have the ability to control, but they still can optimize. So I believe that Lizzo can optimize her health, even though she probably would never be skinny without some surgery, but she may still be able to optimize it. But I'm always confused as to men that are critiquing people's health and they're not the example of the health themselves. So, we got men on the YouTube that, 5-6 years ago, they were clinically obese. They lost a little bit of weight. Good for them. But then now they want to critique Lizzo, or men that you can look at them and tell that they're not at optimal fitness, but then they want to criticize people that may be a little bit bigger than them. How would you suggest we go about doing these things?
Man, that's a very interesting question and a great question. It's, I'm not exactly sure, but what I will say is I know that, and you also can attest to this, is that I'll make a post online, right? And saying essentially the benefits of what good health can get you, right?
Okay.
And then I'll make a post essentially saying the same thing, but the negative side of what it can get you, right? And people respond, of course, much more to that negative than they will to that positive post, right? So again, it's kind of like, it's kind of tough, because psychologically speaking, that's what people respond to, right? And that's what gets them moving. That's what, pains them, right, into action, or a lot of times, right? But like you say, for it to be a healthy message, a healthy communication pattern, I think about Monique and her journey and her health journey, right? To where early on she was very, and again, right, I'm pro body type as well, right? Shout out to boxing, to where boxing is body positive, because it's
Exactly.
about your weight class, right?
Yeah.
As you talked about, you like, yeah, I'm from people who are, my dad is 5'6", right? So I'm about
Yeah.
5'8". My mom's, you know what I'm saying? So I'm a lightweight boxer. I'm about 5'8", 140 pounds. That's just what it is, and that's just what it's gonna be, right?
Yeah.
So for me to try to eat myself into 200 pounds, or for me to try to lift myself into 200 pounds, now I'm putting my health at risk and I'm putting myself in jeopardy. So I appreciate boxing because it's all about your weight class, being optimized in your weight class. And that's so taking that same kind of philosophy of, no, we don't want Lizzo. Lizzo is an endomorph. She's going to be an endomorph. That's just what it is. However, it's kind of like thinking about addiction. You know what I'm saying? And we talk about sugar addiction, or, sodium, or any of these things, these complex carbs that you can be addicted to. It's kind of like, are we witnessing the addiction of a particular person, right? Are we seeing the effects of that addiction, and kind of like, you want to address the addiction, because if it was, another white substance that somebody was addicted to and we could see the effects of it, people would definitely say something about it, right? But I guess it's, again, it becomes a touchy subject, of where it's kind of like, yeah, like you say, these men online, that ain't your lane. You shouldn't even be addressing that. That ain't got nothing to do with you. Now, shout out to the Moniques of the world, who, as a big sister or as a woman, somebody who's been there, done that. I'm not sure if she's had conversations with Lizzo, but like you say, I think that's more of the communication pattern, is not only the relatability is there, that, I've been in your shoes, but it's also, I can provide solutions specifically for you. And then also, again, man, just understanding, yeah, everybody's going to have a different
Raj, you cutting out for a second.
body type. Like, that's just what it is.
Raj, you can hear me? Let me do this real quick. Raj, I'm gonna bring you out. Bring yourself back in. Yeah, you can you hear me? Okay, do this. I'm gonna bring you out. Just bring yourself right back in. Uh-oh. So we're gonna let him come back in, because I want him to pick up. I think we missed like the last 4 sentences he was saying. I want to give him the opportunity to pick that back up, because I think that's really, really important. Because one of the challenges we have is that we have a lot of people critiquing other people's body types. And I don't really think they're the example of what they're critiquing. One of the reasons why I'm a big fan of Coach Saban is because, even though he's an older gentleman, he's in really good shape for his age. And what you see with a lot of coaches, especially in football, is they're bigger than some of the players, while telling the players they got to be in shape. And you start seeing this even on the youth level. So to me, if you're going to tell the player they got to be in tip-top shape, you need to be an example of being in shape, at least for your age group. There's no way at 70 you're going to be in shape of somebody that's 25 years old, but you don't need to be looking like a beach ball, while telling these young guys that they need to be in really, really good shape. And so I think that's something that we need to really start talking, as opposed to just trying to figure out how to criticize this woman because she is, high profile, but then everybody that's trying to jump on this bandwagon, if you look at them, most of them are not in a position to be in good shape. Raj, you can hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep, we back.
Okay, let me go ahead and add you back in. So we had missed the last part of what you were saying. So let's go ahead and reiterate, because we want to really make sure we get it. So how would you suggest that a lot of these people that are criticizing this particular woman, how do you think we should go about this to where we can make sure we have a discussion, but it doesn't come across as like bullying or body shaming or something of that nature?
Right. So like you say, first and foremost, everybody's got a different body type. That's the first thing that must be established. The second thing is that people, like you say, they've got to, if you aren't the example of what you're preaching about, you shouldn't be talking anyway. And so also somebody like Monique, or somebody who's been there and has done that transformation, those are the people who I would expect to, not only reach out to Lizzo, but to also, to be able to speak to the situation. And again, the process of the change in the behavior, because of course, if she's been living her life this one way for however many years, and it's led her to this, and we both know how, after a while, your body can only change so much, right? If you haven't been working with it for years and years and kind of molded it to be a certain way, by the time you start trying to do something at 50 years old, your capacity to build muscle has already been capped, at a certain level. So it's kind of like, we can't expect people to look a certain way. Everybody's gonna come through different. So
okay,
that's ultimately what it is.
All right. So let me go ahead and get your closing remarks before we lose our internet connection again. So if you want to close on anything, go ahead and let the audience know what you want to close on, so we go ahead and I can still hear you.
Yep. Yep.
So I want to go ahead and have you give out your closing remarks.
Oh, we must have a yeah. Nope. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Dave? I'm still there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Right. Crazy. You said the internet would act up on a player. Okay. Right. So just check me out at heal.hustlebook.com. You can check me out at rossassan.com on IG, on Twitter, and then just Ross Hassan on Facebook and LinkedIn. You love to, right after you purchase a copy of Heal Thy Hustle, give you that free consultation to see what. Again, Dave, for giving me the opportunity to address your audience.
All right, man, no problem. I really appreciate you coming through. I hope everybody got value from it. Like I said, if you got any questions, hit us up in the comments. We got a social media connects, so reach out to them and make sure you tap into Heal That Hustle to make sure as you making money, you make sure your health is important, so you don't make the money that you got to try to figure out how to get your health back. So appreciate everybody for coming through. This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. I'll talk to you later.